book of Job, chapter 23. Then Job answered and said, Yea, I know that pleading is out of my reach, and his hand has been made heavy upon my groaning. Who would then know that I might find him, and come to an end of the matter? And I would plead my own cause, and he would fill my mouth with arguments. And I would know the remedies which he would speak to me, and I would perceive what he would tell me. Though he should come on me in his great strength, then he would not threaten me. For truth and reproof are from him, and he would bring forth my judgment to an end. For if I shall go first, and exist no longer, still what do I know concerning the latter end? When he wrought on the left hand, then I observed it not. His right hand shall encompass me, but I shall not see it. For he knows already my way, and he has tried me as gold. And I will go forth according to his commandments, for I have kept his ways, and I shall not turn aside from his commandments, neither shall I transgress. But I have hid his words in my bosom. And if too he has thus judged, who is he that has contradicted? For he has both willed a thing and done it. Therefore am I troubled at him. And when I was reproved, I thought of him. Therefore, let me take good heed before him. I will consider and be afraid of him. But the Lord has softened my heart, and the Almighty has troubled me. For I knew not that darkness would come upon me, and thick darkness has covered me before my face. Shalom Aleichem, Assalamu Alaikum. Welcome to Job chapter 23, in which there are 17 verses. Starting in verse 2, we have a significant, perhaps big difference. It reads here, Yea, or yes, I know that pleading is out of my reach. Verses, even today is my complaint bitter. Okay, so Job is admitting that pleading is not within his purview. It's not within his power to plead to God. It's not something he has the capacity to do. He has no access to God by himself. That's an important point, by himself, because it is through the advocate in heaven. Verses, even today is my complaint bitter. So the focus is on, in the Masoretic, Job's complaint versus his capacity to plead with God. And his hand has been made heavy upon my groaning. Versus, even today is my complaint bitter. Okay, so we can see that's the focus there. Actually, you know what? I think I pasted the wrong part of the verse. It says, my stroke is heavier than my groaning. So my mistake there. So the complaint being bitter is the first half of the verse. Verses. So let's just rewind a little bit. It says, his hand has been made heavy upon my groaning. So God's hand is heavy on Job's affliction, on his current state. Versus my stroke, Job's power, is heavier than my groaning, than his affliction. So my power is heavier than my affliction. Doesn't make sense. That's why we don't go with the Masoretic narrative. We're just simply contrasting why it is false. Verse 3. Who would then know that I might find him? So this can be interpreted in two different ways, because this is Old English. Would does not mean what you should do. It means what would you want to do. In other words, what wish? What is the wish? So who would wish then? Who would wish then? Okay, who would then know? Okay, you know what? In this verse, it doesn't mean wish. It means who is able to know. Who is able to know that I might find him? Or who would want to know that I might find him? I guess you could interpret in two different ways. Versus, oh, that I knew where I might find him. So who is able to know, or who would want to know, or who knows if I'm able to find God, versus, oh, if I only knew where to find God. Significant difference. It reads, and his hand, I should say, and come to an end. This is verse 3 now. And come to an end of the matter. Versus, that I might come even to his seat. So that Job would come to the end of his ordeal, the completion of it, versus that I, Job, would approach his judgment seat or throne. Verse 4. And I would plead my own cause, versus I would, meaning I would want to, or I'm able to, but I believe this is more closer to I want to. Not that this is what he would do, like a prediction. I would do this if I had the chance. No, he wants to plead his own cause before him. So Job is pleading his own case, versus Job is setting or arranging his own case in order before Elohim, because it says here, order my cause before him. So one of the first questions that popped up in my mind is this a verse? Or is this verse, yes, it is a verse, but is this a verse that contradicts Job's previous acknowledgement that he has an advocate on high in heaven, an advocate in heaven? No. Why? We'll see the following second half of the verse. It says here, he would fill my mouth with arguments. What does that mean? Well, the advocate or a lawyer is the one who provides their client with what to say and how to behave in court. Therefore, it is Elohim that fills Job's mouth with what to say and how to argue or plead. Which Elohim? Well, it's the advocate on high. It would be the Son of Man. Okay, and verses, the Masoretic saying, and fill my mouth with arguments. This is Job referring to himself. Job is the one filling his own mouth with arguments and what to say, negating and completely just erasing the fact that there is an advocate in heaven, one who acts as an advocate, a high priest, a mediator. Verse 5 now. And I would, or I want to, know the remedies which he would speak to me. Versus I would know the words which he would answer me. So remedies versus words. What is a remedy? Well, in the scriptural biblical sense, it means healing or help or aid. So I want to know, Job wants to know the healing or helpful things or words which he would speak to me. So it's words in this case because he's speaking remedies. Helpful, healing words. He wants to know because with Elohim is life, with Elohim is healing, with Elohim is help. He is the help, as we will find out in the next book in Psalms. Verse 6, though he should come on me in his great strength, verses, will he plead against me with his great power? So in other words, though Elohim should approach or appear to Job in his glory, in his great strength, in his glory, verses, will God plead against me? This is a question that Job has in the Masoretic. Then he would not threaten me. Verses, no, but he would put strength in me. So in the Septuagint, Job is expressing that Elohim's desire is not to threaten or terrify Job. He doesn't want to do those things. Verses, Job is answering the question, will God indeed plead against Job? The answer is no. Job is answering his own question. No, he won't plead against me, but he would put strength in me. He would encourage me. So that's positive. I think it's more positive in the Masoretic, rather, because he's saying he will encourage me. He's going to put strength in me, versus he wouldn't threaten me. That's not what he wants to do. So he knows God's intentions, or that's his supposition. That's what he's guessing. That's the motive of God. He does not want to threaten him. Okay. Or terrify him, perhaps. Verse 7, our first big difference of this chapter. For truth and reproof are from him. Verses, there the righteous might dispute with him. So this is a fact. These are facts that with Elohim is truth and correction, the best correction, the truest correction, the most suitable correction, not too heavy-handed or too lenient, comes from Elohim. Verses, there is one that exists who is equally righteous or even more righteous than Elohim. Sounds blasphemous. That would be able to dispute and argue with him. Who is he talking about? We don't know. The righteous, he's very vague, but doesn't make as much sense. I'm not saying that there isn't one who could dispute with him, but we know they are not in disputation, the Father and the Son. They are in agreement. They are echad. They are united. They are one in mind, one in purpose. So there is no dispute or argument. Although he does advocate, he does plead on behalf of humanity to God. Doesn't mean that they argue. It doesn't mean that there is a divide or a conflict. There's no shadow of turning. They are one mind, one heart, one accord. But he does plead on behalf of humanity against the accuser. The prosecutor and the defendant. So Yeshua HaMashiach is our defendant. He's our advocate, our defender in heaven. So that's verse 7. And then we have a huge difference, potentially a cataclysmic difference in this chapter in verse 7. And he would bring forth my judgment to an end. So Elohim wants to conclude this, or he is able to conclude this ordeal, this great and terrible, tremendous ordeal for Job. Why? Because he's merciful. I inserted that myself, but he will complete it for Job. He's going to see him through to the end. He's going to come out of it. He's not going to fall to his death, so to speak. He's not going to collapse because of this, and he won't be ended or destroyed or cut off because of it. Versus the Masoretic, so should I, get ready for this, so should I be delivered forever from who? From my judge. Job will be saved from God as if he's someone who is out to get Job. That the intention of God is to destroy Job forever. That is imputing sinful motives and evil motives to Elohim. Again, blasphemy against the Holy Spirit, and from my opinion, from my perspective, that is where you ascribe to the Elohim of Israel evil things and evil intentions, evil actions. You twist things and you call good evil and you call evil good. In this case, you call good evil. You call Elohim one who you need to be saved from. You need to be delivered forever, not just delivered once, but forever. So there's a complete permanent division and dividing, and not even, there's no relationship anymore. You're going to be saved forever from that judge. He won't be able to touch you anymore. So this is imputing a lot of evil motives to Elohim. So that's why I say this is a huge difference, a cataclysmic difference. Whereas in the Septuagint, it rightly says, Elohim would bring forth my judgment to an end. He's the one who's going to finish the story. He writes the best stories. He plans the best stories, and he has the best endings. And it's all for good purpose too. Not in vain, not just for sadistic means like Greek mythology and Roman gods and all those figures that are very immature and very, you could say, carnal in a lot of ways, and selfish, and just play with humanity like it's an experiment, not like they're children, their own children, but like they're, animals in a laboratory. Okay, so that's verse 7. Verse 8, for if I shall go first, versus behold, I go forward. I'm going to just read the whole verse in the Septuagint and then the Masoretic. For if I shall go first and exist no longer, still what do I know concerning the latter end? Behold, I go forward, but he is not there, and backward, but I cannot perceive him. So, in other words, if I plead, or if I die first, before this matter of mine ends, and so therefore I die, I no longer exist. I no longer exist in the process, even still. So he dies before it's been case closed. So Job is saying, even still, even then, what did I learn regarding or concerning why these things happened to me? And I didn't get to see the conclusion of it. What did I learn about the end of it? There's a lack of closure. There's a lack of understanding. There's a lack of knowing the whys, the hows, the whats. Versus, look, I approached the throne of God, but the judgment seat is empty, and I walked out from the court or the throne or where I was looking for him, and I still cannot sense him. So in the Septuagint, to boil it down even to more simple terms, Job wants to understand everything about why Elohim was moved to do this to him. Why, what, where, everything in between. He wants to know the inner workings of the machinations, you could say, of why did this happen behind the scenes, right? And so he would be privy to know, well, there was a meeting with the angels, the sons of God, and Satan was there, and this is what Satan said. This is what I said to Satan, so on and so forth. And this was, so he, I don't know if he got to know that, but eventually he will, wouldn't he? The Masoretic is saying, on the other hand, that Job arrived to the courtroom, or he went looking for Elohim, even to the judge's seat, and behold, it was vacant. So you can see the stark contrast there. So we could say that is a big difference. I would say at least a big difference. closure versus looking for God. Wanting to know and question everything as to why he lived through that, why he's going through that, versus looking for God, not finding him. Verse 9, his right hand shall encompass me, but I shall not see it. Verses, he hides himself on the right hand that I cannot see him. So God's right hand surrounds Job, but Job, I'm going to say Gob, but Job will not be able to see it. Why? Because he's spirit. Elohim is spirit and we are flesh. He's not able to perceive things of the spirit in that way unless he has spiritual eyes, or his eyes are open to see the right hand. Interestingly enough, we know what that means, God's right hand. That's the Messiah who sits at the right hand on the throne. Versus Elohim hides on the right hand. He hides on the right hand side. Why? So that Job cannot see him. So Job, or I should say Elohim, wants to hide himself from Job in the Masoretic text. Verses 10 to 11, because they are kind of blended when we look at the content of the verses. He has tried me as gold versus he has tried me, I shall come forth as gold. Pretty straightforward. Job is predicting he will emerge as pure as gold. So God tests me as like gold, is what he's saying in the Septuagint. I will go forth according to his commandments versus I shall come forth as gold. So that is, I had to repeat it twice because it's talking about how he will come forth. Well, he's coming forth by keeping his commandments. So Job will proceed according to Elohim's commandments, his Torah. It's not codified yet, but it did exist in some shape or form, the oral Torah. Versus Job predicting he will emerge as pure gold once again. For I have kept his ways. So Job reconfirms that he has indeed kept Torah, and he indeed knows Torah, contrary to what his friends have previously said to Job, that Job, you don't even know the Torah. You are Torahless. You need to know it. You need to learn it. You don't have it. Versus my foot has held his steps. So Job's foot or feet has held God's steps. I don't know what that means. Doesn't make sense to me. It's rather cryptic. And additionally, his way have I kept. So it does say that in the Masoretic, so it does match up with the Septuagint. Okay, his way I have kept, but it's not as explicit that it is the commandments, the Torah. Continuing on, it says, and I shall not turn aside from his commandments. So this is the oral Torah made up of many commandments, statutes, and judgments. Verses, and not declined his way, neither have I gone back from the commandment of his lips. So just one commandment, not plural commandments. Verse 12, neither shall I transgress, meaning to sin or break the Torah, versus neither have I gone back from the commandment of his lips. So I have not turned away from or abandoned the commandment, the one commandment. It could be the Torah summed up in as one commandment, perhaps. I'll allow that. I'll be a little lenient and say, okay, maybe the commandment means the Torah, the one commandment that contains all the commandments, the law, perhaps. But that's a stretch. But I have hid his words in my bosom, versus I have esteemed the words of his mouth, so more than my necessary food. So Job is saying, I have guarded, or I've kept his words, Elohim's words, his commandments, where? Close to or in his heart, more specifically, inside his heart. Versus Job has esteemed God's words, meaning he's placed them higher than his own human necessities, which is an honorable thing to do. It just doesn't say that in the Septuagint. Verse 13. And if too, he has thus judged, versus, but he is in one mind. who is he that has contradicted versus who can turn from him, who can turn him, I should say, convince him otherwise, or turn him from where he is leading. For he has both willed a thing and done it, versus, and what his soul desires, even that he does. So the Septuagint is saying, to simplify it, no one can overturn what Elohim has judged and decreed. Why? Because he has wanted to do it, he's planned it, and he has completed it. He's done it. It is finished. Whatever he declares and decrees will be done. It says when he speaks it, it comes into reality, comes to completion, to fruition. The Masoretic, on the other hand, is saying Elohim is of one mind. Who can prevent him? What he wants to do, he does it. So it's pretty close. However, the focus in the Septuagint is on judgment and Elohim's will and his irreversible actions, whereas the Masoretic omits the judgment aspect. When he judges, it just says he's of one mind, or he is in one. So we only have action and will in the Masoretic. Verses 14 to 15. There's a lot of mixing up, or both verses containing similar elements, so that's why I combined it. It says here, when I was reproved, so Job, everything Job has experienced, that's what he's saying is reproved, which is something of an understatement to express all of it as simply reproved. When I was reproved, I thought of him. Therefore, let me take good heed before him. Let me be very careful before him, or let me listen to him very well. Verses, for he performs the thing that is appointed for me. So Elohim does what is allotted to me according to his plans, according to his story for everybody. And many such things are with him. Verse 17, final verse, significant to possibly a big difference. For I knew not that darkness would come upon me, versus because I was not cut off before the darkness. So Job did not know. He had no way to know that this darkness would happen to him. But it indeed happened. These calamities befell Job. Some of the most severe that any human has experienced besides Messiah Yeshua. Versus Job was not destroyed by the darkness. And thick darkness has covered me before my face. Versus neither hath he covered the darkness from my face. In other words, thick darkness, which is a metaphor, I believe, for the severe trials he lived through, surrounded him. There was no break. It just kept getting worse and worse, darker and darker. Versus God did not protect Job from the darkness that affected or touched his face / life. Okay, so it's, I would say, is putting Elohim in a bad light here, saying he's not protecting him from the darkness. Factually, I mean, we can't say he was protected. Why? Because he told Satan, you can only do such and such. You can't cross this line. You can't take his life. You can't, you can only go this far, and you can only do what is with whatever I permit you to do. So yeah, he was protected. If he wasn't protected, he'd be dead, and he would have lost even more, and he would have suffered even worse things. But they were horrible things he suffered, yet it was not more than he could bear, I believe. It means Job was such a mighty, incredible person inside his heart, and his unshakable, maybe not unshakable, but his very, his determination and his iron will, his iron, you could say, He had determination, and he stood in the truth of what he lived, and he didn't let his friends or even Satan, who I would imagine inspired his friends, he didn't let those words shake him to his core to think, okay, maybe they're right. No, he knew who God was, who God is, and the kind of person that he is and what he's done. He could take an honest look at himself and say, okay, this is what I did on the outside, but this is also what I committed in my heart as well. He was very honest with himself, and he could see the situation for what it was. So that's all for this chapter. Thank you very much for your time. Until next time, I bid you all shalom aleichem, assalamu alaikum, Irini Mazisu, Pax Vobiscum, and Maranatha.